My next guest is the founder of International Man and a dear friend and mentor of mine. He is the best-selling author known for his High Ground novel series and is a world-renowned speculator and libertarian philosopher. He has garnered a well-earned reputation for his controversial insights and into politics, economics, and investment markets. Please welcome my friend, Doug Casey. Doug, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. I guess you're back in Panama, and I'm in Thailand. I'm in Phuket, to be exact.
Yeah, we were just chatting a second ago. That is a long journey all the way over to Thailand and Southeast Asia. How are you seeing things in Southeast Asia after COVID and after all this hysteria?
Well, I think that Southeast Asia is the place to be, quite frankly. I mean, and I speak as somebody that has a significant footprint and liking for South America in particular, Uruguay and Argentina. But uh, these countries here are largely unaffected by the stupidity that we're experiencing on a wholesale level in the West. So, if people have forgotten about having a crib someplace else in the world, along with the Southern Cone and a few other countries, I would definitely put Malaysia and Thailand both high on the list. They're very different from each other, but similar in other ways.
Okay, I'm impressed to hear that. I've traveled very extensively through that region, lived in Singapore back in the day, and probably been to both countries 20, 30, 40 times, and I loved it over there. I had heard, I haven't been back since COVID, but I had heard they had some pretty draconian lockdowns in that part of the world. Did you
I,
hear any
yeah.
stories about that while you've been back?
No, I didn't. And I was pleased to see that very few people are wearing masks now. It's pleasant over here. Everything works. It's efficient. It's inexpensive. It's physically safe. I mean, these countries have an awful lot to recommend them. And uh, especially if you stay away from places that are, well, where there are too many package tours, which are annoying. Uh, they're just delightful.
I'm very impressed. I'm actually a little bit surprised because I've kind of gone to some countries recently where the scar of this psychological damage that's been done to them is very deep. Like I was flying just recently last week, and there were still people wearing not just masks, but like N95, like those ones that are suction cupped to your face. And I'm like, Jesus, that's cutting off oxygen to your brain. Like, don't you realize we're 5 years on here?
Yeah, well, maybe that's helping to cleanse the gene pool because when you look at how dumb the average person is, then you have to recognize that by definition, half of them are less than average in intelligence. And perhaps we're moving into an idiocracy at this point. In fact, it was only yesterday or the day before, I was reading an article in one of the national U.S. newspapers. Was it the Wall Street Journal? Was it that fag hag rag from D.C., the Washington Post? I can't, or maybe the New York Times. But one of the three of them had an article about students at very prestigious universities not having read any books during high school or grade school. Uh, they basically live on their telephones, which makes them rather short of attention spanny. So what I said about developing into an idiocracy was not entirely a joke.
Brutal. While over in Thailand, are you going to get a chance to meet up with Mark Faber? He's speaking at the conference this week as well. He's based out of
Oh,
there.
well, not the conference that I was at. That was in Kuala Lumpur, which I've got to say, I was very favorably impressed by. It's like Singapore light. Uh, it's got that. It's a Mohammedan society, but it's not bothersome. But other than that, it's come up so much. It's developed just immensely. The first time I went to KL was, gee, I don't know, 45 years ago, and it is transformed. In fact, let me mention this. It's that you go to any American city today, or Canadian city for that matter, and you could drop me into uh, New York or Toronto or LA, San Francisco, it doesn't matter. And it's all pretty recognizable from the way it was back then, although the demographics are changing radically, but physically they're pretty much the same. But here, uh, all of these Oriental cities they've been rebuilt from the ground up. They're ultra modern, new buildings, high rises, super highways. I mean, it's not the quaint Orient that, frankly, I used to love. Even Hong Kong. I mean, I started living in Hong Kong at the very tail end of the Susie Wong days. Forget about it. It's all high rises, and it's changed tremendously. But they're
Well,
developing, is what I'm saying. And the U.S. uh, isn't building anything new or notable, but here they are.
I remember your story. You told me a story once in Hong Kong that you ended up buying a penthouse apartment or something like that in Hong Kong, top floor,
Oh
for
yeah,
like massively discounted prices.
it was incredible. It was during I think we bought that place in 1986, and it was above the Hong Kong Yacht Club with a fantastic view of the harbor on the top floor. And if I told you how little we paid for it, uh, it would be embarrassing, because that was during a China crisis. And on the top floor, people were afraid that when the Chinese came and took the place over, they wouldn't fix the elevators. And nobody wanted to walk up 13 floors. So a top floor apartment was less than a horrible ground floor apartment. And uh, that was as a real estate speculation, it was fantastic. What did we get? Uh, Not counting the cost of renovation, because of course we wanted to fix it up to our standards. But from the price we paid for it, to the price we sold it for, we got, over the course of 20 years, we got 20 to 1 on our money, cash on cash. Now that is a hell of a hit in the stock market, but in the real estate market, it's a super hit.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, going back to Mark Faber, yeah, he'll be speaking with me at this year's summit in a couple of days. He's also based out of Thailand. Are you guys going to have a chance to have coffee? I know you guys know each other.
No, because he's in Chiang Mai, and I'm in Phuket, which is in the far south end of the country, an island. So nope, we're not going to run into each other actually. But interestingly, one of the guys that I've been spending some time with here is a chap named Michael Yan. Do you know him?
I know his work for sure. He's the war correspondent, correct?
Exactly. And he's got a very interesting background. And most recently, he's known for monitoring the Darien Gap, where he's been many, many times out in the jungle and the whole type of thing, doing his ex-soldier stuff. And it's interesting because the way Michael sees it, and I think he's right, the U.S. is actually undergoing an actual invasion now, an actual invasion with millions and millions of young military-age males wandering into the country and being given cell phones and given money and free medical care and being transported to places and so forth. Uh, yeah, he feels that this is a very, very serious thing from an actual military point of view. And I would not gainsay him. I think it's very, very serious from a cultural and demographic point of view. So it's, and a financial point of view and a political point of view, it's a disaster. The U.S. that we used to know, well, to hell with the US, America, which we used to know and love. And America is basically a concept, it's an idea. The US is just a nation state, but call it what you will. It's being washed away right before our very eyes. And uh, Michael and I have been talking about the fact that we're likely going to go into a civil war in the next few years. Not like 1861 to 1865, but very unpleasant between the red people and the blue people and the migrants who are a force unto themselves.
Well, I've been following this a little bit myself because I'm based out of Panama City. And I've been hearing a lot of these things where they're coming through the Darien Gap and people are saying that, oh, Panama's to blame, Panama's to blame. It's like, no, not at all. There's literally buses that are taking them from one side of Panama to the other. I'm in downtown Panama City. We don't see it. We don't hear it. You know nothing about it. No one on the streets has any idea about these types of things. It's not like there's more homeless people on the street or anything like that. If anything, there's actually less. So I think that what they're really doing is just getting them on a bus as soon as they get through the Darien, bringing them down to Costa Rica, bringing them to Nicaragua, and they're just one by one just taking them across borders and just shipping them up to the US. And now it's like, okay, now it's your problem. And going through these countries, like I was just in El Salvador last month. I've traveled to almost every country in Latin America, both 20 some odd years ago, as well as again, since I've been back in Latin America. And these countries are incredibly safe now. Like there's actually fantastic places you can go where, okay, yes, the Bukele work of arresting gang members is one side of it, but the other part is that the US has just took everybody. Like Honduras emptied their prisons. They just said, there's the door, there's the border, get the hell out. And Honduras is now actually a relatively safe place to be, where if you look 5, 10 years ago, it wasn't.